Hi, this is Paul Neale from Penn Productions, and I'm going to be doing a tutorial here today about how to do rock outcropping using Mudbox and 3D Studio Max from the building it, texturing it, and rendering it in Max. So first we're going to start in Mudbox with a simple sphere. We're going to start with just moving it up to sort of get it onto the ground plane, and then we're going to flatten out the bottom of this the sphere and make sure that it's just flat, so we've got a rock outcropping there. I'm going to use the freeze tool for this and to get it started. So I'm going to freeze an area here around the whole bottom, and I'm going to go and then just invert that freeze with Shift I. And once it's been inverted, then I'm going to go and grab my flatten tool, and I'm going to flatten it to a specific axis. Flatten by default in the advanced will flatten down to an average normal, so you'll get this case where it's sort of wobbling around. I'm going to change that to the y-axis and flatten only to the y-axis, and you'll see that we can now flatten the bottom of that completely flat down to it. Now update plane is on as well, and so I can get it to go completely flat down to that area that it's in there. And you notice it's sort of pulling it down. That's because it's pulling it down to an average. So let's first just move it up a bit, and let's just grab sort of some of this and just get it up in there. And now we can go ahead and just grab our flatten brush and just get it flattened out a little bit. I'm just going to go Shift U and get rid of the bottom of this. And now I'm going to go to my grab brush and spread out the bottom and sort of make it a little more interesting in the shape. Now as I pull it out, I could be going up and down in all sorts of angles, because currently it's set to direction of screen. I'm going to pick the XZ for this, and I'm going to go and pull some of this out and kind of just push it in. Right now I've got a pretty low res mesh. I'm just working on the very base here at this point, and there's nothing sort of no detail going to happen. I just want to get an overall shape just sort of formed and worked out. And now it's pretty cool. I'm going to have a ridge coming down here, I guess, with a bit of a groove in here. And it'll have another groove going down over this side, and another groove here. So I'm just using the negative paint now to come up with some basic lumps, give them a bit more smoothing. I think I'll just use the grab brush again with XZ and just pull that out a bit more. So that looks pretty good, but the problem with doing this now is we've stretched this mesh a lot on one side, not so much in others. It's stretched in some places and just not in other places. So we're going to have different densities of mesh if we continue down the road of trying to work on this. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the rock that we've got here, and I'm going to go run a mesh operation on it called retopologize, and say OK. And what it's going to do is it's going to rebuild me a new mesh. So the base mesh right now is 1,536 faces in total. I'm not even sure I want that many as the base, because this is a level 1 smooth basically on this this model. If I take a look at it, there's the low res. So I'm going to set this down to maybe about 600. 600 here. The total. This is the target base face count, and it's going to try and keep the base amount of polygons down that low. Now with transfer to new mesh, sculpt detail on, it's going to try and up-res that and where it needs to try and get the detail. And I'm just going to say no. I just want the basic lump, and I want a pretty low quality. I want face uniformity up full tilt, so I want to get as square polygons as possible in this case. So I'm going to go ahead and retopo that. Okay, so now we've got a retopoed model. You can see it's more even, and better distribution of polygons all around. Same basic form, pretty low quality. This is actually going to be what we're going to render out of Max. We're not going to do a retopo. It's going to be pretty much this sort of low quality model that you're going to see that we're going to work on and use coming out of Max. So now what we're going to do is we're going to up-res this, and so I'm just going to go up a couple steps, just 2 steps, and add it in a new layer and start working on layers. And back to my sculpt brush now, and again, let's just sort of start doing some sculpting of the model here, and trying to get some interest going, and trying to build up some sort of forms and everything that might be on here. I think I want to push this one in. And because what we're doing is even in a layer, it's actually still affecting the base of the model. So when we go down and look at the lower base model, we're still affecting the overall shape of it and how that's looking. So back up at 2 again, and we're going to continue on and just build up some lumps again. And it's still pretty low sort of quality at this point. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to up res at this point. I think I've done about as much as I want to do at this sort of level. I'm going to go up again by 2 and put it up to 4 and stick in another one, another layer. And then I've got a little bit more detail to be able to pull out some areas and to make some specific sort of changes to things. At this point, I'm going to switch over to the wax brush as it'll fill in the grooves as we go. And then you just want to smooth as you use the wax brush, and it'll actually fill in and give us sort of some nice rocky lumps that we're going to build up. I'm just trying to figure out where the sort of the main rock chunks are going to be and where the crevices will be. And let's go to the knife tool now. So I'm going to say knife, and I want to make sure that my stamp dist isn't too low. It doesn't need to be too low at this point, and we have a follow on so that we can get it to follow and push in and start digging in some of these spots. Now, one of the problems with the knife tool, I'm going to set it back to its average normal is the default. If you watch when I go from side to side, turn it up a bunch so it makes the area, you can see it suddenly jump from one side to the other. And let's try as it runs up the side of one of these crevices and then it back on the other side. It's pushing it on its normals and it's going all over the place. Tends to work really well when you put it on camera, and you're always just projecting away from you at this point, and it isn't projecting from the normal perspective. It's just projecting down through the from the camera. So you have to keep turning the camera to make sure that you're pointing it in the right direction, basically, and you're not going in the wrong axis sort of thing. So it takes a little more concentration to think about what you're doing, but you get a better result out of it. I'm going to just put some cuts just to break up my rock a little more for now, and maybe back to the wax brush, build up a few more areas here. So I don't get any performance lags as the model gets bigger, and also I'm doing screen captures. I'm going to go to Preferences and Render Dialog, and I'm going to make sure that my fast render scale is up, and it already is, so it's up like 0.85 or something. This will just speed up any drawing that's happening on the polygons as I get closer. As I'm further away, it won't draw as many polygons, and it'll just speed up viewport navigation when I'm looking at the whole model. Certainly the process of capturing, and right now I'm also capturing the video of me, slows things down greatly and can slow down the process. So I got some really crazy, lumpy, rocky mess going. It looks more like a big pile of mud than anything. Now I'm going to skip over to the flatten brush and start running flatten. Now, if you remember, I set it to Y, so it's all flattening flat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to average normals, and the average normals again will flatten things out, but it also tend to want to round things around, which I'll want to do some of at some point. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off update plane. Update plane now will take whatever the current axis I start on the first hit, and it will flatten along that axis only. So I can easily go now and just start chipping away at this and basically turning it into sort of rocky outcroppings and make it a little more angular and in its look and feel, just by hitting the model and giving it a little bit of a push on it and starting to break up the model a whole lot. We could probably even try a textured brush in here to try and get it broken up a little bit and see what that does. So why don't we actually just go and grab our stamps and go and find something that's a little more textured. Maybe this one might work. Let's also turn off the follow command. Let's turn on randomize and try a randomized feel to it. So we may not have enough polygons to really see the effect of this, but it's giving us a broken up edge more. So you can see we're just not high enough res at this point, and it may not be providing us really anything that we need. So I'm going to leave it off for now and just continue with what we're doing, and just taking it up spots and pulling it out. A little bit of smoothing when I start seeing too many edges and stuff going on. Okay, so here it is, with some detail in it and sort of blocked out all around. Starting looking pretty sharp. I actually switched over to center normal on the flatten tool so that the first hit of the mouse would be the angle to it, and I wouldn't have to worry about sort of averages and picking up averages on things. So as I hit, I'd get that angle, and I could just carry that angle into the rest of it to build up and get some nice sort of edgy shapes and stuff going on. And you can see as I do it, it's very easy to pick up sort of the angle I want and then just go ahead and work with it. So a little bit of smoothing again. I'm going to just go back now and just back to the knife tool for a little bit and just stick in a few more of these crevices, just push them in a bit more now that I can see them sort of outlined a bit better, with some of those cuts in the model. Again, I'm doing it from the camera angle. And just go in and just push those down in a little deeper. Again, you can start seeing the model breaking down a little bit here. We should probably step up to another level so that we don't get as many issues. So let's actually do that now. I'm just going to step up one more. So Shift D, give me a 5 before, so I can go in and cut this one in. And if you notice, see how it's kind of giving me this jaggy line? What I've actually got is my spacing set a little bit higher. So as I turn the corners, it's not giving me a clean line right away. It's giving me some jaggies and stuff, and that's good. It's what we want rocks to look like, a little bit rough and rough in their textures and lines and things. So let's get maybe another one here, cut in. Push down that surface. Turn off my grid and W on the keyboard to get rid of the wire overlay, and take a look at what we've got. That's pretty cool. It's starting to look pretty rock-like and rough. I'm not sure I like this ridge that I did down here. Maybe this is a little bit too much. So I'm just going to go back to the flatten and just try and flatten out some areas here. Pull the brush size right down and just make that look a little bit rockier like that, I guess. Yeah, that's not looking too bad. Now I can go around with a pinch tool and grab it. So I'm going to run the pinch tool now, and just I'm actually going to run it with the steady stroke off, and just so I can just go around and just it's pretty much on full, and just tighten up some of these edges that I've got. And I'm not worried about the pinch tool having steady stroke on, because I'm looking for random, for a bit of random shape and form. But I think I want some of those edges a little sharper in areas, and just looking a little more, sharp rock-like edges, hard edges, and everything. And then we're going to start adding some more detail via the use of maps. So that's looking pretty good. It's got some nice sort of formation to it, and it's got overall sort of rocky, pile kind of feeling to it, big chunky rock sort of outcroppings. I'm going to drop in a new layer now, and our wireframe is still looking pretty good. I've got my wireframe layers turned down so that it doesn't actually slow things down when I show the wireframe overlay as well. So here what we need to do now is to start putting in a bit more texture. So now I'm going to go to the imprint tool. The imprint tool actually has this default texture added to it. It is this one down here. And it's pretty good. With a new layer in, I'm just going to drag it out, and it's going to drop in some texture. And you can see it's just going to build up again. But it's going to build up for whatever angle I currently hit at. And it's going to be average normals. So you got to be careful. It's just going to be used for a little bit of weight. So I'm just going to pull that weight back down and just give it some texture from some sides. And this looks like too much still. It probably is. It's going to give me a little more sort of fine detail. You can see I've got this hard edge coming up when the brush edge hits. And I believe that's because the default fall off is really harsh. So let me just get rid of those. And let's go with a soft fall off on this. And now we're not going to get those harsh edges. And it's not going to be as sort of, violent on the sides as it goes in and textures it. So I'm just going to go in and just plaster in some detail now. Okay, so we got a bunch of rock sort of outcrops down. What we can do is we can adjust the amount of that. It just looked a little too much maybe in some spots. And if we want to go in and sort of add a bit more, we got a bit of a lower amount. So that's sort of roughed it up a little bit more. Got us a bit more chunky sort of feeling to it. And it's starting to look pretty good. It's starting to look rocky, I guess, for the most part. And so let's get a texture on there now. So that's the modeling stage for the most part. Again, I'm sure lots of work can be done to it. And next is going to be texturing. So we'll texture it up and try and make it look like a rock.